St. James in the first reading sounds like some of the prophets from centuries before him when he's talking about the oppression of the poor. And certainly Christians can relate to that today because we see so much of it in our own world where the poor are oppressed and are persecuted and are being used for others to gain wealth. He's not talking about wealthy people who do good with their wealth. He's talking about wealthy people who acquired their wealth by injustice towards the poor. And we see that in our own society today. He's reminding us that we don't take any of our riches with us. A friend of mine once made the statement that he never saw a U-Haul truck in a funeral procession. And I think that's a good image. We take nothing with us when we die. We take with us is the good that we did in our lives. But we see that, I know when I went to El Salvador and really saw firsthand social injustice in a way I'd never seen it before, when I saw so many very poor people who would work for 15, 16 hours a day, picking coffee beans or picking corn or picking sugar cane, and they would make $2 a day. $2 a day. I was just overwhelmed with that. When I gave one family $100, they were so overwhelmed. It would have been more than a year's wages that they'd been able to earn. And it just reminded me how I know I saw this great poverty, children with no shoes, homes with dirt floors, no electricity, running water was scarce. And you see all those things that I know I take for granted so many times, but to see how there are people who are really poor, and we not, as Christians, we must do what we can. When we give to the missions, we help people who don't have water to drink or food to eat. And the Lord's reminding us that that's what we need to do, to give of what we have, so those who do not may survive, not only just enjoy things, but survive. And Jesus says in the gospel that we should, if you give a cup of water to someone because they belong to Christ, you will not be without your reward. To give something to someone who has nothing, we give to Christ. He uses hyperbole, great exaggeration in the gospel. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off or gouge out your eye. He certainly doesn't mean that literally. But what he means is that sin is so bad that we must get rid ourselves of sin that takes root not in our physical body, but in our spirit, in our heart, is where sin begins, what we desire and what we do. And so we must cleanse our hearts and our minds of the things that lead us to sin. But he's making a point that sin is serious. When he says, keep salt in yourselves, salt is a preservative, and it's God's grace. If God's grace is within us, then we will have peace with ourselves and with one another. So we come to church because we receive the peace of the Lord here in this Mass and in his word. So today we give thanks to God for all the material blessings that he has given us, for all the spiritual blessings he's given us. And we ask his blessing upon those who are poor, and that we may do what we can in order to alleviate that poverty. So the Lord calls us to remember that we have to see Christ in everyone we meet. Let us stand and offer our prayers and petitions.